Today is a milestone moment for this country, and I'm pleased to join Minister Hayward and cabinet ministers as we together mark a turning point of history in Bermuda's labor movement. The implementation of a minimum wage is more than just a policy. It is a symbol of our commitment to fairness, equity, and dignity in the workplace. It is this government's commitment to uplift those who have long been the backbone of our society while creating an economic environment in which every resident has a dignified wage. I thank the Minister of Economy and Labor, the Honorable Jason Hayward, for his passion and determination in advancing this important legislation to completion. And I'd also like to thank former Minister Levita Fogo, who worked to advance this initiative during her time in cabinet, and to the Wage Commission and public officers within government who contributed to this effort. This is another demonstration of a promise made by this government and a promise delivered by this government. Minister Hayward.
Thank you, Premier, and good day to members of the media and the listening public. Today, June 1st, 2023, I am pleased to announce that Bermuda's first minimum wage rate of $16.40 is now in effect. This long-awaited legislation will enable low-income earners to receive a dignified wage. It is estimated that hundreds of workers across Bermuda will receive a pay increase due to the newly enacted national minimum hourly wage rate. The newly enacted minimum wage rate will become the national wage floor, the lowest salary employers are permitted to pay. Most modern, developed countries have a minimum wage regime, and more than 90% of the ILO designated countries around the world have a statutory minimum wage regime. Numerous evidence-based studies outline the many benefits employers and employees realize in countries where a minimum wage has been instituted. Minimum wages will assist with the following: promoting fair compensation for employees, improving individuals' quality of life, preventing the exploitation of workers, preventing working families from falling below the poverty line, preventing working families who are below the poverty line from receiving unlivable wages. This government has committed to the workers of Bermuda to ensure they receive a dignified wage which allows them to cover their basic needs. It is a promise this government has worked diligently and deliberately to implement. Through the desire to provide adequate social protections to all Bermudans and to establish a comprehensive minimum wage is fundamental to ensuring that we progress to a just and equitable society. I am also pleased to announce that the Department of Labor is releasing a guide to the minimum hourly wage rate, which provides an overview of the legislation and summarizes the operation and enforcement of the minimum hourly wage rate. It covers areas such as what is a minimum wage, who is entitled to a minimum wage, the right of an employee, the responsibilities of an employer, and the role of labor inspectors. The guide is available on the Department of Labor's website on Govt.bm. People of Bermuda, this is not an opportunity to alter current wages downwards or introduce lower wages for new employees. It is important to note that employers paying higher rates of wages and providing more favorable terms and conditions of employment than the prescribed wages at the commencement of the minimum wage order are required to continue to pay such higher salaries and provide more favorable employment terms and conditions. The minimum wage order does not alter other terms of existing employment contracts. Accordingly, employees will continue to be entitled to additional allowances and benefits as agreed upon in their employment contracts. Employers found manipulating employees' wages to try to intentionally circumvent the order, corresponding legislation and policies should be reported to the Department of Labor, which such matters will be reviewed and investigated under the relevant legislation. Employers, employees, and their representatives who have questions concerning the minimum hourly wage rate should contact the Department of Labor. The Department of Labor is open between Monday and Friday, 8:45 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the number to call is 297-7716 or email departmentoflabor@gov.bm. I want to thank the dedicated team who has worked on the legislation and policies and the Wage Commission for their initial work to get us here. Today, a minimum wage is a reality in Bermuda. Our people deserve it. They deserve to enjoy decent work and fair compensation. Thank you. Thank you, Minister and Premier. At this time, we welcome the media for questions, starting with
Governor David, one question. With this economy of high food prices, high rent, outrageous prices, $16, is that suffice for the average low-income worker?
Some would argue that $16.40 is not enough. Others would argue that $16.40 is too much. The government believes that $16.40 is an appropriate first step. What we will do over the next few months is monitor that particular rate, and it will be up to the Wage Commission to provide alternative recommendations as to how we progress that rate. But $16.40 as a minimum wage is one of the highest minimum wages in the world.
Thanks for your comments. And a question about employers who may feel that they want to pay new employees a living wage when previous employees are being paid higher. What's being done to discourage this besides, you just informing them that that's not against policy?
So I made it, in short, I deliberately mentioned that in my statement today to discourage that type of behavior. However, we will constantly monitor occupational categories throughout the economy. And if it's found that we find that persons are revising wages downwards, recommendations would come forward to have sectoral occupational wage rates set.
What support may be offered to employees who may feel they're being intimidated from speaking out or reporting this behavior?
For unionized employees, I'll ask them to contact their unions. If those persons are not unionized, I'll ask them to contact the Department of Labor, and I indicated the contact information and the medium that they should contact the Department of Labor in my statement.
So besides employees or other people perhaps reporting any discrepancies, will there be any physical inspections or payroll or companies or businesses they're having their payroll inspected?
For example, for work permit holders, certainly their work permits would have to be amended to reflect the increase in wages, and we'll be putting out a statement in terms of providing employers with instruction regarding that. We will have labor inspectors that will be reactive and proactive. Reactive meaning they answer the calls of concerned citizens, but proactive in terms of looking into some of the matters where we have anecdotal information where employers may not be living up to their expectation.
And now that the minimum wage has been implemented, what steps or actions have been taken to look at introducing a livable wage, and how will that differ?
That's a natural next step, and so we will have that meaningful conversation with the Wage Commission. From a government standpoint, we want to ensure that a livable wage is in alignment with the cost of living in Bermuda and also in alignment with what we consider to be poverty thresholds. And so there is some statistical work that needs to be done for us to derive a living wage.
Thank you. And just lastly, regardless of a minimum wage, cost of living is extremely high in Bermuda. And in order for the local economy to sustain itself, we do need additional workers. What progress has been made to attract more workers or grow the local workforce?
I indicated in the House of Assembly in the last sitting that it's my intention to roll out an economic development strategy on June 16th. That strategy will be a robust economic strategy which will aid to expand economic activity, which will create additional jobs, and then those additional jobs will be filled by both local labor, but also expatriate labor, so that we can increase our working population.
And will that be in tandem with the original economic plan, or will it be completely new?
A strategic priority in the economic development strategy will be continued execution of the economic recovery plan.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Minister, can you tell me how many people are going to be affected by this?
We estimate hundreds. Correct. No, we don't have an exact number.
Why not? Surely that's part of the planning for this. Do you know how many people should be affected?
We have estimates. People's employment relationship changes and their rates of pay change. And so we do have, where it is reported into the Department of Statistics, persons that make within certain income bands, and we're able to monitor that. And so we do have numbers as it pertains to persons that fall within certain income bands and ranges. And so we do have statistics, and my answer to you is that there are hundreds of individuals that will be directly impacted, and even more individuals that will be indirectly impacted.
Could you talk me through the allowable deductions, please?
The allowable deductions would be basically the statutory deductions. What we will be doing is tabling regulations in the House of Assembly tomorrow, which will actually spell out what those deductions actually are.
The opposition said that, with the allowable deductions, which include things like pensions, it won't actually be $16.40 at all. They say in some cases it could be as low as $7, $8. What do you say to that?
I would say that $16.40 is progress from $10, $11, or $12 in which people currently make. And so I think we need to note the progress that is actually being made. The minimum wage was always designed to be gross and not net. But it's a good start, and we will continue to progress that wage if we believe that, notwithstanding we have a livable wage in place, it's determined to be an undignified wage.
Well, what do you say though to people who say, because these allowable deductions like pensions, it's actually a bit of a con job. It's not going to be $16.40 for a lot of people.
No, that's incorrect. When we say what is somebody's wage, we talk about one's gross wage. And so the gross wage is set at $16.40. There's no con job. We're being extremely transparent as it pertains to the wage, and we'll be extremely transparent in terms of what can be deducted from that wage.
Your ex-PLP colleague, Rolf Commission, said, quote, that this is one of the greatest sellouts in the history of Bermudan employment rights. Is he correct?
I don't understand that question.
Saying that this is a sellout. It's one of the biggest sellouts ever. It's not actually going to be a $16.40 minimum wage.
I don't accept that.
So why weren't gratuities involved? Because this includes gratuities, doesn't it? You can build up to the $16.40 with gratuities.
Correct. When we explored the way in which salaries were paid in hospitality in Bermuda, the majority of wages that those individuals were paid were not paid by base rates of employers. They were paid by the service charges and gratuities. And so we fundamentally paid persons different. And so to set a wage of $16.40 and not take into consideration gratuities and service charge, it means sometimes we'll be closing an $11 gap.
Well, it does include gratuities like tips, which it doesn't in Britain. You reference other countries having this.
Correct. So it includes gratuities and service charge. It does not include free tips.
Okay. So your ex-colleague, Mr. Commission, also said that this completely lacks equality. What do you say to that?
Again, I don't support Mr. Commission's notion.
Okay, on the living wage, finally. I know Jasmine asked about it, but you've been talking about this for a long time. Is there a time scale going on, or is it like universal health care? It's just always a bit beyond the horizon? Is there a definite day when you do these talks and when you can bring in a recommendation? That's what I mean.
After we finalize the work on the minimum wage, the next stage would be have meaningful conversation with the Wage Commission as to what are the steps to complete a living wage figure.
The target would be 6 months, 12 months?
Correct. The next 6 to 12 months will be appropriate as a time frame in terms of laying out a roadmap as to how we achieve a living wage in Bermuda. But as I articulated, is a number of statistical work that needs to be done that exceed the capacity of one sole committee.
You have employers that's going to violate this new process. What might be the penalties?
There are civil penalties which are built within the legislation.
And on what exactly they might be?
I believe that the civil penalties shall not exceed $7,000 and a daily fine of $500 for contraventions, as well as persons that commit an offense are liable to a summary conviction to a fine exceeding $5,000, not exceeding $5,000. And so there is a costly penalty for persons who are non-compliant and a daily penalty for the continuance of non-compliance.
Thank you. That agrees with the final question, Mr. Do you have any further remark or whomever for that matter?
Certainly, this is a historic day for Bermuda. It is important that we continue to progress social protections, labor protections, and the rights of workers in this country. I believe that the Progressive Labor Party has demonstrated our commitment to workers and our human-centered approach to economic recovery and economic growth. Thank you.